Okay, thank you all for coming. Super excited to be doing this event tonight. So I'm Matt Odowadegdo. I'm a professor of economics at Chicago Booth. Economics class that's going to be offered next quarter. If any of you want to bid on that. There's a new textbook with that course called Better Health Economics. This is my first book that just came out. This is copy.
Oh, yay!
To us today.
Amazing.
So as many of you probably know, we do this regular healthcare speaker series. We've primarily been focused on alums in different industries. And today we have Alyssa Jaffee here from Seven Wire Ventures. And I think this is our first speaker from venture capital. So excited to have that. I wanted to just maybe give you about 5 or 10 minutes to introduce yourself, talk about your professional journey, and then I can jump in with some questions. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds great.
Take it away.
Can I ask before we get started? This time is meant for you all, not to hear my own voice. So please, would love to have this be an engaging conversation. I'd love to know who's here. So can you just raise your hand if you are, if you know what venture capital is, or maybe that's too much. So are you interested in venture capital? Oh, a lot. Okay. Are you interested in entrepreneurship? Okay. And obviously I think everybody's interested in healthcare. If I say anything that if I use acronyms or things like that today, please just wave me down and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I did not do that enough. I feel like when I was in business school and was scared to ask those questions, and you should not be. I wish more people had given me that kind of freedom. So Alyssa Jaffee, I'm a partner at a venture capital firm here called Seven Wire Ventures. And I'll talk about us, I'll talk about our firm, but maybe first kind of my own journey.
Sure.
I did not grow up as a little girl dreaming of being a VC. So there's a lot of ways to get into this career path. And I think one of the most wonderful things about venture capital is that so many different types of people can be very successful with so many different types of backgrounds. I am operator turned investor. So I used to launch enterprise technologies in healthcare. I did solution selling and I managed teams for the advisory board company based out of Washington, D.C. before they later sold to Optum. I left there, I went here to business school, and at that point got interested in venture capital. And I can tell a little bit more of that journey, but I started working, I worked for 2 smaller funds. And then I ended up starting a company. I actually ended up winning the New Venture Challenge. I raised a small round for that, just under $1 million, and then transitioned to the board, and I went more institutional investing. So at that point, I went to work for the Pritzkers, JB, who's from Illinois, his brother Tony, about 8 billion AUM, 3 asset classes. And I was there until I came over to Seven Wire, where we are about 5.5 years ago. We are a dedicated venture firm focused on investing in digital health companies under a thesis that we call the informed, connected health consumer. So everything that we do is all about helping people to become better stewards of their own health and really thinking about healthcare technology and services meeting people where they are. We're an operator-driven model, so all of us have built and scaled companies before, and we really focus on the ways that we can be more concentrated and really help our companies to drive growth. And because of that, we do a lot of creative things. We invest in companies, we start companies, and we do a lot of weird stuff in between. And about 50% of our capital, so our limited partners, are about half financial and about half strategic. So health plans, providers, pharma, employers. Matt's had the privilege of meeting a number of them in our annual meeting, and just again a real opportunity to create leverage when it comes to scale on the customer basis for our company. So maybe I'll pause. I'm happy to kind of jump backward in time a little bit on the why of VC and a little bit of kind of the industry itself.
Let's do a little more on the personal journey part.
Yeah.
A little more about how you ended up in venture capital and how you ended
Sure.
up particularly in the healthcare sector.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I want to hear more about the firm because as you summarize, I mean, it feels unusually focused to me. And so I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah. So I grew up in Chicago. I lived in DC for a long time, and then I moved back here. And my husband's also from here, but we met in DC, and now kept thinking we were going to move at some point. And now I have 3 kids, and here I am for life because my mom's super helpful. So I love this city. I love what we do. I think there's actually a lot of opportunities to think differently when you're not based in the Bay. So happy to chat about that. I'm one of 5 kids. I'm a thrive in chaos kind of person. So there's sort of nothing you can throw at me that will faze me. Hence why I also have 5 children. I have 3 children, 5 and under. But for me, I really believe in connecting dots and lines in ways that maybe other people can't see. And I've sort of been that person my whole life. For a long time, when I was a young girl, I wanted to be the president, which today means something a little bit different. But it was really something that nobody actually encouraged me to do, which I think a lot about how we encourage each other to pursue unique career paths. And it wasn't until I got to business school. Actually, a lot of people told me not to go to business school. I was very successful in the career. I had the advisory board, and it was a total kind of you pulling yourself out of a rocket ship path because you believe you can kind of go even further. So I think this place I owe a lot to what it did for me, and just exposed me to things I didn't know a lot about. I came from a family, everybody went Big Ten. You just went Big Ten. That's what you did. Like nobody was smart. I had great grades. I took APs. I did all these activities, but just like that was the path. And it wasn't kind of until I got here that somebody said like, hey, there's actually other paths. And I met Mark Tebby, Professor Tebby, who taught a class called Entrepreneurial Discovery. And he said, hey, like you seem to like this a lot and you kind of are good at it. Like, have you ever explored this world? And so I started to commit to the exploration path of what it would be to be in this sort of symbiotic relationship between entrepreneurship and venture capital. And everybody told me that I was never going to be a VC because I was not an investment banker. So at the time, again, I'm an operator, which is so funny now because like now they'll tell you all like, you can't be a VC unless you're an operator. But at the time, 10 years ago, it was like, you can't do this because you weren't a banker. And my response to that was, great, I'm only going to do this and I'm going to do it really well. So I set on this path to commit myself to this journey. For me, I'm a healthcare person. I'm a daughter of an orthopedic surgeon. My sister's a trauma surgeon. I spent my career in healthcare. I did spend some time in a generalist fund, which was wonderful, great place to really learn and create some institutional knowledge. But for me, what gets me out of bed every morning is not like investing in custom furniture. It's investing in mission-driven businesses that are changing the way that we receive and deliver our health. And we think a lot about sick care in this country, but not enough about well care. And really, where I spend most of my days is reimagining what it means to be a consumer of health. So it's all I really wanted to do. I think you asked about it's unique to be a fund with this kind of specialty, and I would actually retort that it makes it's better. Not just I say it's better. The actual data says it's better. The PitchBook data, specialist funds outperform generalist funds, particularly funds that are in the 250 million or sub range. So having an actual focus creates real opportunity for us to make impact. I talk a lot about in venture. There's pickers and makers, and I'll tell you all the reasons I'm a great picker and have great deal flow and why I find great companies. But in healthcare, especially, if you can't make a great company, you won't be successful. And a lot of my time and our energy goes into that piece. It goes into what can we do to make these companies successful? Because if you get a customer, it's not like SMB, you get a customer, oh cool, you have like $20,000. Like Cigna is one of our LPs. If you sign Cigna, that will be game changing for your entire organization. And so how can we make sure that we're the ones actually bringing that to the table? So set my career to do that, have a lot of fun doing it. This job's a little bit addicting. You see the future every day. Like it's kind of hard not to love it. I meet some of the most interesting people in the world, and I'm very humbled and just grateful for the type of exposure that I get to really spend my days in my job work.
That's great. So tell me more about the company's strategy. How do you think about how you think about it from the beginning of the picking to making? How does it all work?
Yeah, so again, we're thematically driven. So for us, it's not just our overarching thesis around consumer-directed care, but it's a lot of sub-theses. So we spend a lot of time every quarter kind of taking a deep dive into specific topic areas and saying, where is it that we think that there's opportunities? Where do we think that there's white space? Kind of mapping that market. And we actually present that back to the incumbents and we share that research with them, have a dialogue about what they're seeing. So it's kind of ever evolving. We'll do things around behavioral health, women's health, oncology, cardiology, health equity, Medicaid. We're doing neurodegenerative right now. So the list goes on, but we kind of know what we're looking for and we spend our days going out to find it. We have a great network of, how we do that, where we do that, the folks that send us deal flow. We're not first check-in typically, We will sometimes do seed and we will hatch, so we will build companies. Most notably, we built, the managing partners of the firm built a business called Livongo. Many of you may know that business. It ended up exiting in an $18.5 billion transaction. And we built 4 companies today. Most recently, we built a women's health business focused on Gen Z women, helping young women gain independence and agency in their healthcare journey. And we'll go out and we'll really think through, what is it that we're looking for? And then I spend most of my time trying to find that. I'm doing a deal right now, a company that I've had a thesis in for a very long time, a space. And I've known the CEO for a long time, and I feel very strongly about this entrepreneur. And so I ultimately decided to actually preempt their financing.
Tell me about some of the areas you're most excited about, some of the areas in healthcare.
I spend a lot of time, so again, anything that's in a B2B2C business model focused on empowering consumers. So it's not D2C cash pay, it's really focusing on how you can engage with the incumbents, but then empower consumers. That's a fit for us. Typically, they have some kind of B2B traction. Typically, it's, they maybe are hovering around $1 million in revenue, something like that. And but sub areas, I spend a lot of time in women's health. I care a lot about it. I'm a personal consumer of it, and my experiences are so much better than most women in this country. 4 in 10 babies in this country are born on Medicaid, so just think about maternal health, postpartum care, fertility, and beyond as women age. We also look at specific chronic conditions. We invest in parsley that's focused on root cause resolution care, so using functional medicine, primary care, and longitudinal support to create better understanding of why things are happening to us, whether it's autoimmune or GI or fertility, etc. I spend a lot of time in SMI, severe mental illness. So I sit on a board of a business called NOCD. It's focused on obsessive compulsive disorder and other comorbid populations, PTSD, panic, anxiety, etc. Doing phenomenally well. The founder is an unbelievable story of his own struggles with the condition. I heard him speak last year, and so I look at kind of higher acuity stuff. I'm a big tech-enabled services investor, which is very not in vogue today, but was in vogue in the pandemic. So the cyclicality of venture is sort of comical sometimes, but I do believe to impact healthcare the most, you do have to impact caregivers. So we will probably do less on like back office infrastructure, rev cycle, and we do a lot more again in ways to empower consumers.
Got it. So I should think of it as more consumer facing than
Yes.
company facing.
Yeah.
And maybe I should have backed up just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So like in terms of the companies mostly selling to consumers versus mostly selling to insurance companies, do you have a preference? Do you have a general thesis about which makes more sense for the businesses?
Yes, we do not believe that a direct-to-consumer business can build a multi-billion-dollar business in healthcare. Like, you will cap out. That doesn't mean you can't start there. If you need to get some traction, you need to start building something. But at the end of the day, those businesses tend to be wellness business. Like when people mention to me Hims and Hers or Rose, like, but that's not my mind. Like, that is not a true healthcare business. And so we do, most of our companies will sell into risk-bearing entities. So most of them will sell into health plans, insurance companies, some that I mentioned, and then we'll sell into. We have some that sell to providers, some that sell to pharma, but I'd say the bulk of our companies will sell to plans and employers.
And can you give just a couple minutes about how do they make that case? What are some of the barriers they face? How do you make it happen?
Yeah, it sort of depends if you're a plan or employer. Like a NOCD is really interesting because NOCD was a transition between they started direct to consumer and then they pivoted, and they basically showed health plans how many consumers were actually utilizing their platform and paying out of pocket for a service that they should have coverage for. And then they showed their health outcomes data and went to all the health plans and said, look, we're actually keeping these people out of the ED, we're keeping these people from getting more severe, we're keeping these people from having substance use disorder. And because of that, this should be a partnership that we should have, which now they cover just over 2/3 of the entire country. So again, just huge coverage on the health plan side. Then we see companies who are selling to employers. So we started a business called Transparent. It was a spin out of Livongo. My partner, Glenn Tolman, is running that business today as CEO. And that business is really focused on how we can reduce the overall cost of healthcare and to improve the consumer experience by partnering directly with employers and providers and less so with health plans. So they'll sell direct to employers and the really big employers who obviously have tremendous cost burdens as it relates to their healthcare spend, and they will go at risk with them in order to provide a better experience for their employees and to lower their overall healthcare costs.
So they need kind of the data to show those downstream cost savings as part of what's making.
Yeah, Transparent has that data, and so do, I think that if you think about the early days, like sometimes, for example, Brightline sells to employers and plans, and Brightline is focused on pediatric behavioral health. And Brightline, it was really why employers adopted because there's a lot of parents with young kids who are having challenges, especially in the middle of the pandemic, and a lot of behavioral challenges that come out of the things that were happening at that time. And the supply shortage on the provider side was so acute that a solution like Brightline, partnering with a solution like Brightline was so important for employers because they were then able to offer that benefit to their employees and to their workers. So I think that it's data has to come, right? That's sort of your like ultimate mecca, but on the path to get there, there's a lot of other demand channels that you can utilize because there's such a pain point amongst the employee population, the member population, the patient population, whatever you're servicing.
What are some areas that you think are maybe underexplored or you'd like to see? You'd like companies coming to you, areas that you're not seeing?
Yeah, I'm a verticalized investor, so I believe that it's really, really hard to be all things to all people. And if you're trying to do it, you have to raise an inordinate amount of money in order to be successful. And so I do like seeing companies who really can nail, like even Livongo, like we nailed diabetes and then we expanded across and service a number of chronic conditions. So I do like that sort of verticalized focus across a number of chronic conditions.
The NOCD work is an example of that, I'm guessing.
Yes, NOCD is exactly that. So NOCD started, so NOCD exactly like people were like, oh, OCD is super small and that business is like literally just skyrocketed and quadrupled year over year. I mean, they've done extremely well because again, they end up servicing their population, about 90% of who they service has it. So it's like less about this one condition, about this spider web. Like, we pay in a fee for service world, but like you have to have something and some diagnoses, but a lot of times they're integrated. So, and I think there's like still more opportunities on preventative medicine, preventive health. We started a women's health business for a population nobody cares about. Like everyone's like, oh, 18 to 27-year-old women, like, college age women, like why they don't spend anything. Yeah, because they don't show up until they show up in the ED. So, there's a lot that you can do to actually give them preventative health care and empower them so that you reap the benefit of the downstream cost savings down the road. So I think that there's still more to do in terms of how to present that in the system that's not done.
Thoughts on AI in healthcare?
I'm a believer AI is an enabler. So like AI, most of my companies at this point, for example, I'm a board of a business called Jasper Health, which is in the oncology space. So they help consumers navigate their cancer care journey. And Jasper has an amazing AI platform, but it's targeted and specific for the use case of that, you get this life-changing diagnosis, you have 5 new providers, you have no idea how to manage it, and then you have all these benefits that you don't know how to access. Med adherence rates on chemo, most chemo is now oral, it's super low still. So again, just all the things that come with having this big diagnosis, and AI is actually really, really helpful when it comes to the communications, when it comes to resources that members can have access to, but they're not I wouldn't say they're an AI company. Like I think that's the sort of the buzzword, and I'm less of a horizontal player, so I think there's many interesting AI applications. I think AI will game change how we make care more efficient. I don't believe that AI will completely replace care.
Let's open up for questions for a little bit. I got lots more questions here, but since this is an unusually large audience, I want to make sure there's ample time for all of you to get your questions answered. So let's go ahead.
Just building up on that last question, what are some of the areas that you think AI can help? Just curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah,
Even
so
as an
like,
enabler.
yeah, I think if you're a provider, really, you just, okay, my sister's a trauma surgeon. Like she went to school for 12 or 13 years. Like not, I don't like that's like an unbelievable amount of school to like be that type level of provider. And yet like she still has to do like documentation and charting. She's still like, when you think about scripts getting filled, like how can we make sure that our providers are operating top of license and that AI is taking care of the rest? So a lot of it is even in, sitting down and having, you think about like, pediatricians are very top of mind for me. We spend lots of time at the pediatrician and we sit down and there's a lot of information that they already have and they already know, but the way it's placed or the way it's in their EHR, I mean, Lori just went down for, I don't know if they're still down, but still down. Yeah. So that's great. Again, weeks now, and they have no idea what the history of my kids were or why we're there. And imagine if it's surfacing like, hey, I'm coming in for X concern. And they say, AI says, hey, like they've actually like this concern has happened 12 times over the last 3 years. Like, so this is something you may want to have a dialogue with them about. Like it's more focus time. Or again, script, like think about asking your provider to write a script for you and where's the right pharmacy and how to do like all of that is most of my companies now fully use AI for that. So I think there's just so much in the ancillary that providers are not actually spending their time using their brains, delivering high quality care because they have to spend so much time on the things that AI can be a supplement for.
So following up on the last question, thank you for coming, by the way, this is a great talk. I work for a payer and our defense architects believe that attacks specifically on healthcare institutions in the US, specifically kind of using the internet, kind of like happened to Gloria, have just been exponentially increasing. And they believe that at least in part, those are state sponsored. Aren't you worried that incorporating AI in startups would actually make them more vulnerable to attacks?
I'm not a cybersecurity expert. I think there are so many ways to create vulnerabilities that I do not think that AI is adding to that. I think that it's just maybe another channel, but at the end of the day, as you think about phishing scams, I mean, I just got a text yesterday from someone like, hey, I got a new phone, confirm it's me, Adam, one of my CEOs. And then it looked weird, it said his last name, and I was like, that's weird, he never texted me that formally. So I screenshotted it and I emailed it to him and he's like, that's not me, right? So I guess it's scary and I'm not defending that we clearly, Lori, if you look at what's happening there, I'm not defending that we have the right protections in place, but I think disallowing or not allowing AI to come into I think the benefit outweighs the cost when it comes to the ability to transform how care is delivered, and we still have that technology risk whether AI is there or not. Humans are worse than AI.
You mentioned Transparent and Livongo, and you mentioned like the partners kind of building those companies, and so wanted to understand how that works, like building a company while in and kind of spinning them off. How does it work in a VC model?
Yeah, so we're not an incubation shop, so we don't do this like 30 times a year. We just do it when we think nobody else is solving the problem. So we've done it 4 times. We do it about like 1 fund, more or less, maybe 2 a fund. Most recent one was women's health business called Caraway, and that was really a business that we were doing a lot of work in women's health. We really created a thesis around when women, kind of graduate from a pediatrician and then they turn 18, they leave home and they effectively fall off the face of the earth. And they don't engage with the system and the system doesn't engage with them. But all these things start happening. The rates of depression and anxiety are higher than men. They end up, symptoms for conditions that later affect fertility, like PCOS and endometriosis, those start arising, and yet they're not getting the care that they need. And a lot of them find themselves on college campuses where the care, if maybe many of you think back to your experience in your undergrad, is quite subpar. And interestingly, I think it's 96% of this age range is actually insured. 75 or so % of them are dependents on their parents' plans, or they have commercial insurance, and so they actually are paying into the system, but they're not reaping the benefits. So once we kind of created a thesis around like servicing this population, we went out to find like, is there anybody doing it? And we felt like nobody was really doing it that solved the problem, or if they were, there's a couple companies we looked to buy, and we're like, maybe we should buy, but again, it was expensive. We didn't have a leadership team, or there's a number of, again, there's a whole economic piece of investing that you may love a company, but it may not be the right economic investment. So we ended up deciding that we were gonna hatch this business, and we brought in an amazing leadership team so I was sort of like graduated as the mother of Caraway and gave it over to the team, and they've since now launched that business, have an amazing consumer product, and they're working with a number of organizations. Google Ventures, GV, and Mavron came in for the Series A. Still early, but off to the
So with like, to go off of the question before that one, with the AI, so there's companies like Google, like getting into diagnostics with AI. There's a company like Atomwise with their AI drug discovery. Like, do you see any other companies becoming like getting like a bigger market share in healthcare?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of companies that are growing in market share, and it just depends on like a Google. I think the incumbents are very valuable, and even integrating AI into startups, like they've done a really good job in terms of partnerships. A lot of the incumbents have struggled with their offerings specifically to play in healthcare. I think that's where it's sometimes been a bit more challenging. So they become more of an infrastructure layer again than like a care delivery player, and many of them have since bought or acquired companies like a One Medical or something like that in order to support it.
There's been a lot of news for like movement in the industry towards like responsible purchasing, so like price transparency efforts. I guess how big of a shift is that for the companies that you work with, and what kind of
Yeah. And on the whole, it's a good thing for my companies. Like right now, for example, Transparent has a big program around obviously driving down costs, and they do a lot of work in center of excellence and site selection and really thinking about like you just don't go to where you go because your friend told you. Like there's actually major incentives to go somewhere else that's super high quality and way lower costs. And if you look at even in the city of Chicago, if you just like benchmark against like a CT scan, like it's wildly different depending on where you go and how much you have to pay. So this is a good thing. Like this creates more incentive for companies to actually use that data and help drive consumer preference or consumer utilization in order to ensure that the cost of the products. So I think I can't think of a case where like it's been a negative for a startup to get access to more data or more visibility into what's happening with the health plan. I think the pre-auth or pre-auth stuff like that, I think on the whole is good. There are some companies where like they may be in a prior authorization process where like they're a step therapy, and then so maybe that would hurt that company. But I actually don't think that's the direction of where the changes are going. It's more around, I think when you read articles like this, consumers been on the same drug for 30 years and then all of a sudden the drug changed on the formulary and now all of a sudden they can't use it. And like I think those are more of where you see the changes happening.
So, like right now, there's so much going on in healthcare. So, how do you decide where to invest, which business to pick up? Like, what are the most important factors you consider?
Yeah. Just for context, we look at 2,000 deals a year, and we do 2 to 4. So, like, the odds of me investing in the company that you send me after this panel or send me on LinkedIn, even though you clearly have my email address, all is very low. And it's not just, there's so many, when I say like, it's not just like, I like this idea, right? That's sort of like, again, for thematic investors, I kind of know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for your idea, I'm looking for your traction, I'm looking for the team, like relationship with the team, why I think that's the team to do it. Where's the market opportunity? What do I think the financing and the capital needs are? What's the previous capitalization of that business? Like, do I think that is that gonna hurt, hinder, benefit kind of where we're trying to go? What's the market? How big is it? How big can this business actually get? Like, you may start a company, and if someone came to you and said, I want to buy this business for $20 million, that's amazing. Like that's like life-changing for you, and I would be pissed. Like, that's bad. That's weird. We're not aligned in incentives unless you're trying to build the business. And then ultimately there's a level of economics and governance as part of the structure. Like, I see a lot of companies where the economics are just upside down, and just for us, it's not the right structure. We have to justify our involvement by getting the economics that
we're seeing a lot of really worrying trends with preteen and teen mental health these days. I was wondering if there are any companies that you've come across that are in that space and what challenges that space presents that are unique.
There's a company called Brightline. I sit on the board of that company. The founder and CEO, Naomi Allen, is unbelievable. She was actually the chief growth officer of Livongo. She has 3 kids, and her kids really struggled with behavioral challenges. And ultimately, she had a really, really hard time finding providers. There just aren't that many providers. And the wait lists are egregious. I mean, 6-8 months to even see a provider, and then you have to go to their office, or they can't see you for months, and then most kids just get medicated. So ultimately, they built a business that has sort of 3 components to it. They have what they call Connect, which is really about content and the things that you can learn and do as a family. They have coaching, which is specifically for the parents. So how do we coach you through the things that you can do when your child needs your help outside of the provider office, real office? It's all virtual. And then they have Care, which is true teletherapy, and they actually are W-2, so all of theirs are licensed therapists. They just signed a big deal with the state of California where they're actually providing Connect and coaching to all kids in the state of California. So that's just one company. There's others that are doing the same things, but I feel super bullish.
Oh, could you talk a little bit more about your journey, I guess? One thing you sort of briefly highlighted was how you sort of made a move into venture capital when everyone was saying like, no, you need to have an IB background. So can you talk a little bit about how you broke that glass ceiling for you?
Sure. I think that this is a very like starry-eyed industry, but it's not rocket science. Like you don't actually know if you're good at this job for like a decade. So like now I'm like, that decision I made 10 years ago, maybe I would have done a different one. Like it's just such a long learning curve, and it's more about supply and demand. Like there's just a lot more people that want to do this job than there are people that actually than jobs available. And especially as you move up the ranks, like you go into now as a general partner, there's very few of those opportunities. And so continuing to like a lot of what I do is we run an intern program, and I focus on running a diverse intern program to just teach people how to be check writers and to kind of get an initial experience, get their foot in the door. But you asked kind of how I did it. There's a little bit of an archetype, I think, for VCs. Like a lot of people, I did a panel at booth for SeedCon, and somebody said, like, tell me how to get a job at Andreessen Horowitz. And I was like, it was the end of the day, and I had sort of a crabby day, and I was like, you asking me that question means I know you're not going to get a job and a little bit facetiously, but the truth of like, it is a lot of self-creation. It is a lot of like, Booth is amazing in terms of career services and connections and navigation, but like, this is not like when consulting is like, you show up to this coffee chat and you sign your name here, and then you click this button for an interview, and you have a job. It's like, you basically, what I like to say is, sort of get yourself so far into the spider web that it's hard to get you out. That, you intern for a lot of people, or work for a lot, I did the full-time program. So working for a lot of people, or you volunteer your time, your evenings, you work with startups, you engage with this community, you start meeting people, you go to the panels and the conferences that we're at, and you start, again, like thinking about how you can be more and more ingrained to the point where you become a thought that when somebody's looking to hire. And I was just saying before this started, like Steve Kaplan here, I owe him and a lot of the professors here a lot to my success, but I never actually took his class because I didn't have enough good points. So I like kept showing up to EFPE, and he was like, yo, get out of my class, lady. Like finally, he's like, I don't take auditors, you can't be here. But I was like so determined that eventually, when Pritzker Group was looking to hire, and they sort of went to all the top B schools, and they emailed all the professors, and they were like, hey, like, who do you think is really good? Who should we talk to? And he was like, do I have a person for you? Like this person, like at the end of the day, like the brand that I built for myself was like, stop at nothing to work in this industry, to know everybody, to do everything, and to be valuable. And I one of the things that I have a hard time with business school is that, and you all may feel different, because I assume a lot of you are part of, evening, weekend, or night,
Probably
part-time.
mix. How many
Who's
evening weekend?
full-time? Evening, what do we ask?
Who's full-time? Who's evening weekend?
Okay,
Please mix.
well, next, so like, I found that in business school, there's so many things you get, but to train you how to be like good managers, you sort of like, you assume the generalist mindset, like we're kind of like all the same. And in reality, like you're all very different, and you actually are really good at something, because like you wouldn't have gotten in here if you weren't good at something, and you're all specialists, like you're not generalists. And so one of the things I always say is like venture capital, it's like we don't hire people like consultants do, where like they want to mold you in their own image. Like I don't have that luxury. Like I need you to be good at something. Like I need you to come in and I hire on 3 vectors: passion for technology, analytical horsepower, and original thought. Like I need you to be able to deliver value. We're interviewing right now, and we, knock on wood, I think we've chosen a candidate, and you know, it's people that I think can come in and I can know day one the work I can give to this person. And I think that's really what you're trying to emulate, that you're either an industry or a functional expert. Like when I was coming in, I was a healthcare expert. I knew like, you know, this is what I will say about healthcare. Some people are like, I don't know if I want to be in it, or for me, like this is my sort of life's mission and many lives over. But also once you know it, it's hard to unknow it, and you have like a competitive advantage. It's really hard to learn healthcare. So I knew healthcare. I knew, you know, I was an expert, and I launched a bunch of technology. So kind of go to market, top of funnel, sales, etc. And that was my, like, I wasn't for everybody. Like I wasn't everybody's cup of tea, but I was the right cup of tea for the right funds that I really wanted to talk to. So I didn't have a plan B. A lot of people ask me that, like, what would I have done if I didn't get a job? And that just like wasn't, again, there's a lot of a DNA thing with venture. Like there is not a prescriptive list on how to do this job. It's an apprenticeship-based business. It's a lot of like, you sit there, you listen, you learn, you listen, you learn, you listen, you learn. And one day they're like, get out of there, lady, you're in it, you're in the fire, like, good luck, hope this company survives. And that is the kind of people that thrive in those environments are the kind of people that we want. And I will say, most people are not that kind of person. So most people want this job because it seems really cool. And it is really cool. And there's a lot of and a lot of it that's not cool. Like it's finance. I still spend a lot of my day in Excel. But this is it's so intellectually stimulating. I love what I do. I hosted this thing with a friend of mine who's also a VC for the Economic Club for a bunch of working moms. And we had everyone like raise their hands, like, do you want your kids to have your job? And she and I were the only one that raised our hand. We like couldn't believe it. Like, you know, there was everybody, bankers and lawyers and doctors and business people. And so again, this is a just an amazing job, but also like a very odd job with only like very specific and limited skill sets, and only and the ambiguity of this can often really crush people. And so it's not for everybody. And there's a lot of that level of like self-navigation that you have to do, and self-drive. And there's not a very good feedback loop, and it's something that you have to be comfortable in. And as I said, like I'm a big believer in family of origin. I'm a big believer you kind of are who you are, why you are, for like who you grew up as, and you know where you were in birth order, and a lot of the life experiences that you had as growing up. And like I was put in a life that allowed me to thrive in uncomfortable situations and hard situations and chaotic situations. And that is what has made me in this job, you know, knock on wood, so far, it worked out.
Speaking of feedback loop and VFP costs, so I'm wondering, once you sign the term sheet, how do you work with the founder team to interact with them and to make sure that they're on track of success, and, for example, have access to enough future round of financing, and they're launching their business with the go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, so so I'll probably spend at least 50% of my time in the portfolio. So I actually spend most of my time doing that. When I talk about pickers and makers, like that's the maker part of it. I talk to our CEO, my CEOs, bi-weekly, weekly, or some of them daily. It depends on what's going on and what the CEO is. today, where I spend a lot of my time is helping them to drive growth. So I do a lot on, helping them close customers, introducing them and closing customers, talent. I do a lot of fundraising for my companies and I do it with them. It tends to be a skill set that I am good at and I like. But in the early days when like I didn't have this big network and I didn't know all those folks, like basically I just did everything I could to be valuable. And that was like, I'll build your financial model. Like I will build this for you and like take that off your plate. Or I will go through and like edit this customer contract and give you my thoughts on it. Or I will like demo test all of your products and find bugs for like again, anything that is like in the trenches. I think that's where you build a lot of relationship and rapport. And then today, one of our companies, I'm not on the board, but they were presenting to us and I made like an offhand comment about venture debt. And then they pinged me and they were like, hey, like, what did you mean about that? And then we did a whole call about it. Again, just like trying to educate them on how, if they're taking on debt, what that should look like, what some of the reservations should be, like the watch outs or things like that. So, this business compounds quite dramatically. But I will tell you, when SVB imploded, like I called my partners and I was like, what are we saying here? This is what I sort of think. And should we do this? Should we not do this? And again, like there's one of my days is not black or white. A lot of it is shades of gray. Like a lot of it is in this business is just judgment calls. And when you ask, like, how do we ensure success? It's like, what am I doing? I'm the most involved board member in every board. So what am I doing to make sure that they're growing and successful? But am I also making sure that we have the gift of time? And I'm looking quite significantly at their financials to make sure that they have the runway that they need. My businesses run out of money every year and a half. That's like insane. My husband runs like a 400-person team and he like cannot believe how much money my company's burned. Like it's just so different. Like EBITDA doesn't really exist in my world for a very, very long time. And so it's making sure we get to those milestones so that these companies can really be successful.
So I have a two-pronged question. I'd like to go off your thing about archetypes. Like I'm just gonna go off a list here. Like these are business archetypes. There's peacekeeper, architect, strategist, protector, planner, commander, helper, individualist, builder, leader. So which of those are important for being?
Where do those come from?
Those are like Principles U by Ray Dalio. So like which of those do you think are important for being VC?
Here's my answer is like all of them. Like you will find it. This is the best thing about venture capital is like there is no one path. Like there's no specific person. We all got here very differently. I think there are commonalities in like the ambiguity piece. I think there's commonalities in like my strengths finder. I don't know what that thing was. My strengths finder is number one is woo, like winning others over. And you're like, why are you in venture? Like that's like you should be running a company. But actually, like most of my job is influence. Like most of my job is trying to influence my team to get them to do the deals I want. My job is influencing a board I'm on to get them to see a perspective or a strategy I want. My job is raising money for my fund, not just for my companies, but for us. So we give people money. My job is convincing talent, convincing entrepreneurs. Like there's so much of that. So again, and that's not, a lot of VCs don't have that. A lot of VCs have other amazing qualities and talents. So like my push to you is like, there isn't enough, like that's the crazy thing about this job is like, there is no like checkbox path. It is a choose your own adventure that has so many twists and turns a part of it. And it is like the stamina that the people have to not only get in, but to stay in and be successful that I think separates them. What's your second part of your question?
Just like give me like tips on like go-to-market strategy and how much that should take a part of your like pitch deck. Like should it be like 1 page, 2 page, or can it
For a
be?
company?
Yeah. Sure.
Pitch decks are everything is 1 page. So like a pitch deck, I could like probably write on this board. Be like, problem, solution, market, user journey, competition, business model, financials, fundraise, team. Like it's gonna be 10 to 12 slides. Like that's it. That's a pitch deck. So you're gonna have a whole data room of all the specifics on your go-to-market, but pitch decks are the way VCs consume. People always give me friction for this. They're like, that they should, VCs should read an executive summary. I'm like, cool, they won't. So it's your, you can want that, and I hear you, like, but they consume information one way every day. And if you slow that down, that doesn't mean you won't get funded. It means your odds of getting funded are lower because you're not in the process that they have created to make decisions quickly. Like, again, I see 2,000 deals a year. Like, I can't, if I had to read like a Amazon style 7-page prose, like that doesn't mean that doesn't come later in the data room and there's really interesting things to read, but that's not how we consume information up front to make quick decisions. And all we're deciding is, if I take this meeting or not take this. Your pitch deck is basically that gatekeeper just to say, not invest or don't invest, but talk to me further because I'm interested.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you were sitting at booth, I'd love to hear a little bit about your path of when you decided, okay, this is the area that I want to focus in. Because I think every year, like I listen to all these podcasts from the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, and every year is just so different. Healthcare is just so fast. Like, how do you not get paranoid? Like, man, I'm in this women's health business now, and then it's gonna be, okay, maybe that's a bad idea. Women's health is never gonna be obsolete, but something else.
Good answer.
Like, what was your progress like?
So what you're asking is, when I make an investment, how do I know that company, that bet is gonna have longevity?
Or more from the entrepreneur's standpoint, like, okay, I'm gonna launch this is what I'm gonna stick with. This is the concept, this is the go-to-market.
Yeah, I'm a believer in two things. I'm a believer in solving problems. Like, are you actually solving a problem? And you would be shocked at how many people want to do something in healthcare that's not actually a problem, or like it's not a big enough problem that the juice is worth the squeeze. That's like in healthcare, you want to go sell a health plan, guess what? 18 months later, you're still trying to sell that health plan. So you better believe that it has to be worth it. And that is, I think, where a lot of people have a disconnect. I also feel like I'm a big believer in founder market fit. Like, have you lived and breathed a problem so badly that like you can't be in this for money and money alone, because like there's way easier places to make money. Like, this is not the easiest way to make money if you're a healthcare entrepreneur. So you have to be doing this because you genuinely believe that this problem cannot exist anymore. Like, you will stop at nothing. I talked with an NOCD founder, like he lived such a horrific journey with his condition, and he was like, I don't want anybody to ever have this problem. And I think that there has to be something. And businesses pivot all the time. People say to Glenn, like, Levon goes up and to the right. Glenn's like, haha, it was like, like, I think businesses, they flow, they change. I mean, I feel like one of the best is like Twitch was like that's not a healthcare example, but like it was like a guy in a camera or something. I don't know. Yeah, Justin TV, and then it became obviously a multi-million dollar business. So I think every company out there has will iterate and change based on how the market changes, and sometimes they're too early.
But
If we aspire to careers like yours, how do you build up this kind of market and sector expertise?
It's a good question. Like, I think that being a good investor is a lot about pattern recognition. And I always say, like, you may have depth, but I have breadth. And I have seen this movie play out. And now, again, and I'm not like, I'm 10 years in, that's not that long. But I've seen this movie play out in a lot of ways. And I've seen shut down companies before, exited companies. I've had major step ups for companies. I think that you start to see where that goes. A lot of this is like consuming information and then creating your own perspective on it. So I'm a very decisive person. I tend to, sometimes to a fault. Like, sometimes I feel like my job is like to have opinions all the time. But, like, I have to have an opinion on everything, and like sometimes I don't care. Like, I do, like, even in my personal life, I'm like, I like give an opinion, and then I'm like, well, I don't even, whatever we want to have for dinner tonight, it doesn't matter. Like, I think this is a job though that you consume information from so many different places. You create a vision for what you think, where you think the world is going, and then you commit to kind of different milestones to help the world get in that direction. So I think a lot of it is curiosity. It's intellectual curiosity. It's listening, it's learning, it's reading, it's surrounding yourself with really interesting people. It's creating a network of just diverse listeners and learners like yourself to, and I say a lot of time, I'm very grateful to Booth, like some of my lifelong friends come from this place, and a lot of us are healthcare VCs. And the other day I just called a friend of mine, and I have a company that's at a very pivotal inflection point, and it could go one of two paths, and both paths are like pretty exciting. And I called one of my best friends from Booth, and I was like, what do I do? Like, how do I advise the company? Like, I'm really struggling with like what I think that like which path. I think both paths have, you know, different opportunities. And again, like, it's not, when I say it's shades of gray, it really is. Like, it's this is not a black or white job. There's very few times. And these companies change so quickly that like a decisive decision you made that you're like absolutely definitively 2 years ago, 2 years later, you're like, wow, that's done. Like, I that was a bad decision. It's how quickly it's changed. Or that was the right decision, but now we have to make a different one. And that happens a lot, especially like leadership.
Okay, guess I'll ask the last question. One other portfolio company, tell us one other company that you haven't mentioned so far that you're really excited.
Oh my gosh, that's so hard because I
It's
love
like picking children.
it really is. It really is. Like, I think, look, I'm gonna give you a non-answer because what I'm gonna say is like, you can look on our website, you can look at Sevenware Portfolio, or sevenwareventures.com. And I would encourage all of you, like, if this is something you're interested in, sure, you can like talk to me, you can send me stuff, whatever. Please don't send it to me on LinkedIn. But more so like connect to my companies. Like, that is like the best way to add value. Like, go find them. You talk about, you know, pediatric behavioral health, I have an investment there. We talk about SMI, I have an investment there. Like, oncology, we investment in LGBTQIA+. Like, we have so many interesting companies aging in place, like building GI, diabetes, like building amazing things. Like, you all actually are way more impactful if you can go and help them. Like, you all work for really, you know, the ones who are currently working or was working, like you worked for in healthcare and you know people that you can help make tremendous impact for some of these early stage companies. So I think if you want to like dabble, like, that's the job. The job is like not kind of being nice to me. Like, the job is, in fact, like, the job is to like help them. And so I think the more you can show that you can do that, like, the closer you are to getting.
Great answer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
you.
Hey, thank you all for coming. Stay tuned for our next speaker series. And for those of you who didn't get to class, I think I gave you enough time so that you're not late. See you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.